It is now.
Yay. But it's nice, I do like my hood. I have rather an odd piece of scrap fabric. It's not a perfect square. Here's the problem. I used this for another project not too long ago, and it came out almost perfectly with a nice square pulled out of the bottom. But I have a thought for it, because I still want to use this fabric, that I can make a short cape to cut just along this, or just at this little corner piece, and have the rest of it as a short cape. So what I'm going to do today is cut this as a opening for the collar. I can use the, I don't know, I'll have to find something to sort of bind it together at the neckline, and then I'll sort of cut along this bottom with this as my length marker and use that as the base of my cloak. I don't really have a willing set of shoulders to act as a mannequin for me, so I'm going to have to eyeball this. So I'll see you downstairs with a ruler and a pen. Okay, so here we are in the voiceover. Been a minute, and for once I wrote a script, so this ought to go pretty well. I made this piece back in January when we were snowed in for a few days, and I could not be bothered to do anything but cozy up with some tea, movies, and some sewing. I'm still learning a lot when it comes to pattern making, but capes are pretty much the bottom of the ladder, so I felt pretty safe just winging it, and to not a bad result. I set up in our dining room since we have the most open space there, but please excuse the cat box. I started out measuring the neck opening of the cape and then the length of the cape body itself, and since I had the bottom point already marked with the missing chunk, it was really easy to figure all the rest of it out. And then some snippy. I prefer to use my pinking shears when I'm cutting out woven fabric since I find it helps mitigate fraying, which wasn't really much of a problem with this wool as it was already slightly felted and it held its edge really well, but better safe than sorry. Then I tried the cape on. I found that the neck wasn't wide enough to accommodate me, and I quickly cut off another few inches at the neckline, and that seemed to work. Next was the hood. The construction for it was very simple, just a square from the cabbage that I would seam up at the top and the back before attaching to the neck of the cape. I ended up sewing those pieces together first. The plaid turned out to be a really convenient marker for cutting, stitching, and hemlines since I would follow them and be able to keep a true line without really paying attention. I could have easily done this whole process by machine, but I was eager to try making a large piece by hand and using classic techniques of the seamstresses that came before me. I used a backstitch through almost all of the longer seams that would bear any hint of weight and left enough seam for felling after. If you're not familiar with the term, a felled or a flat seam is a seam made by placing one edge inside of a folded edge of fabric and then stitching the fold down. If the fold encases the raw edges, it protects them from fraying. It's useful to keep seam allowances flat and for covering raw edges. I also like to think it adds a bit of extra strength to a hand-stitched seam, and it keeps things all neat and tidy and makes the inside of a garment look much nicer. It is time-consuming, however, and has fallen rather out of fashion with most modern tailors. No shade, I just wasn't in a hurry for this project. Once I was finished sewing the seams and felling them, it was time to hem the opening of the hood. Since the edge was already felted, I didn't have to worry about turning it over twice as one would with looser fabrics, and so saved on a lot of bulk that would have come with such a hem. Instead, I pointedly left the openings of the hood and cape along a finished selvage, and only had to whip stitch the single turned hem down into place. Everything got a quick press, and then it was time to add the hood to the cape body. I had to make a square hood fit into a curved neckline, which at first seemed more difficult than it ought to be. The hood was so much wider than the neckline that I could finagle a gather along the bottom edge and disguise any ugly stitching that I had to do. Turns out this gather was also extremely pretty and added some extra body to the hood when it was worn, which was very nice indeed. Once the hood was attached, that seam too was trimmed and felled, a task made no easier from the gathered fabric, but I think I managed. You may also notice that I stitch with a leather thimble. I would strongly recommend to anyone interested in sewing anything by hand that you get a good thimble that fits your finger well and is comfortable. It makes sewing through tougher fabrics easier and saves your fingers any extra pain added from hours of stitching. I've tried metal, plastic, and have landed on leather as my preferred method. After the hood was added and the cape hemmed, it was time to add a fastening. I considered buttons or a tabbed closure, but since I had some extra cabbage, it was easiest just to make a tie. I went ahead and made 2 laces of the same orange wool, turned twice, whip stitched closed, and then attached them to the neckline with some heavy stitching. Everything got one last press, and then it was done. The whole piece was done by hand and drafted by myself off of some very casual research online. It doesn't close in the front as well as I would have liked it, but for a nice spring or fall occasion, I think it'll do the trick. I really like the way that the fabric moves, and the hood is wide and deep and can go over any ambitious hairstyles or cap. Overall, it took maybe 2 or 3 days to make, though that time could be cut down considerably by the use of a sewing machine. And then it was time to drag Moo out into the snow to get pictures. He was actually a really good sport about it, so thanks. And here, the necessary twirling footage. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, hit thumbs up, share it with your friends. Thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great day. Do something creative. No, I made this string too long and it's tangling. Because I'm lazy, and for some reason I think a long string that tangles all the time is going to be faster than many different strings. Yeah. This is some bullshit. I need this. Okay. Are you here to help?
One more time just for the hell of it.
You're just trying to make me dizzy at this point.
No, but now that you mention it.
This is actually kind of fun. Okay, now I'm dizzy.